Good Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Austin Price, Jesse Simonton, and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us. Tennessee is 3 practices into the books, one step closer to full pads. Austin, I'll start with you. Give me, in a nutshell, a synopsis of 3 days what you've learned about this football team.
They are bigger, faster, and stronger. Does that equate to more wins? I don't know. But I mean, they do look like a much bigger football team than they ever were a year ago. I'm surprised Juwan's as healthy as he is and has been a full participant through 3 practices. I thought he would be more limited, but at least when we've been in there, he's been active. So those are kind of my biggest takeaways. And then just some of these young kids. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. I don't know if they start game 1, but I do think they factor at some point this year the Darnells, the Henrys. Eric Gray, those type of players, I think, are going to play this year. Only time will tell, though, if it's right out of the gate or if they kind of work their way into it.
Rob, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it did get built faster than bamboo grows, or at least Tennessee fans hope that's the case, right? Your takeaway?
I mean, very similar to Austin. I mean, just bigger, especially in the defensive line, is where it jumps out to me. And I think more athletic. Now, can Darrell Littleton play? I had no idea, but I mean, he's certainly is a physically imposing guy. Same for Savion Williams. And, Aubrey Solomon looks like you expected a former 5-star recruit to look that's been in a major college, weight program for a couple of years. So just, we've not seen him play any football yet, but Pruitt, one of the things he lamented when he first got here was, hey, where are the big guys at? And you can see that in 2 recruiting classes and 2 off seasons. I mean, it seems like he's really addressed that concern.
Jesse, I asked Jeremy Pruitt this on Sunday.
This is where I was going to go. So yeah.
About what do you learn about your football team in 2 days without pads? My question is, what do you learn about your football team, about a football team, 2 days in non-contact work, now 3 days in non-contact work?
Yeah, and that's why my answer was going to be kind of what Pruitt gave to you, which is it is hard to really make vast observations here. So I do think across the board, Tennessee's effort and intensity has been there. We have there's been some guys that hasn't been the case with, some that Pruitt and some of the other assistants have gotten on to. But I think they've had the tempo for practice has been good. That the guys seem to that there's not guys thinking about where we go. Everything seems to be moving and well organized. And then we'll see what some of this size stuff translates. I mean, Pruitt said it himself. Some of these guys may look good just in shorts and shoulder pads and may never play it down for Tennessee. And others who, maybe don't pop as much end up being huge contributors. So individually, I think, AP mentioned some guys, but I think 2 other freshmen that have kind of been impressive, just in the limited capacity that we've got to see them, is Warren Burrell. He's been really good in both of those. The 2 days we've seen kind of the cornerback, wide receiver release drills. And then McCullough has worked either,
Are you shocked by that one, though? Because I'm not. I thought he would.
No, but I mean, you talk about Darnell, Eric Gray. I mean, like these are guys. I mean, like
Yeah, I'm saying those. I'm not sure if those guys play right away, but I think body size and natural ability is going to take over at some point.
Yeah, and I think McCullough is also a smart kid. He played from a good program at Hillgrove, and his versatility is going to help him. The fact that on Sunday at the canceled open practice turned into kind of traditional viewing period. He was out there back at safety working with Trayvon Flowers. The day before, he was kind of working with that group, but he was at Star. And so I think that's going to put him on the field faster. But, that's just kind of course, my generic takeaway from the first 3 days.
The 2 guys you named, both early enrollees.
Yep.
2 of the 3 for me were not, and Gray did not go through spring.
One is still right now. I mean, through 3 days, they've had the same starting 5 offensive linemen, with the ones, working with the ones. It's been Wanye at left tackle, Trey at left guard, and he continues to slowly do a little bit more contact. Kennedy center, Calvert at right guard, and Marcus Tatum at right tackle. And I mean, I had this, I had the continuity versus competition story on Sunday morning. The 5 guys I just named, the only guy that was in the lineup in the finale a year ago in the starting lineup was Marcus Tatum,
who is as different as we've seen him, Austin, when you talk about not just a physical look, just visiting with him at the media, he clearly, because of the weight he's carrying, the size he's carrying now, I think carries more confidence than he's ever carried in a Tennessee uniform.
Oh, agreed. Now, he says he's just as agile and all that stuff as he ever was. Now, I don't know about all that, but I do think that, he is a more confident football player, and a lot of it's because, I think he struggled so mightily to put on weight with the previous staff. I mean, he put on a bunch of weight, but I mean, remember, I said, what you would, 235? He goes, 240. I said, sorry for shortchanging you 5 pounds. Point is like, he got to, 275, 280 with the previous staff, but it was, Fitz in them that have really made him, jump this extra 40 pounds.
Well, and he kind of, I did think it was noteworthy that he kind of admitted his own vulnerabilities when he got here and struggled those early first 2 seasons. He even said straight up, because someone asked him, have you looked at a before and after picture, since a couple years ago? And he said, he has, and he just kind of laughs. And then asked the follow-up, so what is your reaction to that? And he said, well, a lot of folks said I never should have been recruited, and now I think I can handle my own. And I think, to Austin's point, I think he has some confidence there because of that size. Now it's up for that to translate. A year ago, he had put on more weight, but not to where he is now, and I thought he kind of struggled laterally being able to move like he could when he was a recruit. We'll see if another year in Fitz's system has kind of alleviated some of those problems.
Yeah, I was talking to Marquez Callaway, Rob, about just off-season training. He talked about just the amount of squats that Fitz does. That obviously the thought was to be more explosive and to get more lateral and get more quickness. We'll see how it translates into the line of scrimmage. But you look at a guy, if you flip it to the defensive side of the ball, John Mincy. Jesse and I talked about it in the 2-minute drill on Saturday, I guess. I mean, he moves well. Elijah Simmons, for a guy who's only been here 3 months and his size, moves well. Not saying they're going to be good, but when you watch them just walk around without or run around without pads, there's some athletic ability with that.
Mincy
with that group.
And Latrell Bumpus both jumped out to me in that regard. I guess on Saturday, just watching them do their board drills with
the dummy drills.
Yeah, dummy drills. Able to picking their feet up and putting them down. Mincy, it's funny you mentioned that because I thought the exact same thing, and then Bumpus as well. And that's what everybody talks about. Everybody works hard in the offseason. I mean, that's the biggest cliche, but to actually be able to point to a couple of spots and see it show up, and as you say, they're running around without pads on, but still there are some noticeable differences out there, not just in physiques, but I think, as you mentioned, explosiveness.
Another guy. I don't want to interrupt you there, but a guy that I think it's going to continue to take some coaching. You see Tracy Rocker trying to bring him along. He obviously did not give Tennessee really anything during his freshman season, but we know, talking to some people, AP, that the staff has high hopes for Kingston Harris. He does flash in terms of just power when they do some of those drills. He does flash. Now, the technique's not always there. Clearly, he's got some fundamental stuff. But you talk about it, when the pads go on, leverage. He's not a guy that jumps out in terms of, he's a big guy. But
right.
Physically, with some of the other guys, I think they're probably more impressive. But I think he might be a guy that Pruitt's talking about. I mean, he's been running with the twos. We've seen him. I mean, he's just a guy I think could have. It's a big 3 weeks for him.
Now, when you look at eyeball test, and anybody jump in here, but when you look at eyeball test for the guys that we didn't see in the spring, either they were out with injury, like an Eric Gray, or they hadn't got here yet. Who's the guy that passes the eyeball test the most for you? Is it Henry T?
I think so.
In a lay down?
It's Henry T. and then Elijah.
I was going to say Simmons is going to be on that list.
I mean, just how nimble this dude is. I mean, like it.
And Middleton's massive too, but it's just we don't know how.
He's just tall.
Does the strength or does the size translate to strength and power? Excuse me.
And there's, I don't want to say there's baggage, but there's a little bit of baggage with Middleton because everybody, they know the history. Multiple stops, didn't want to play the position, fought it, transferred schools to avoid playing a different position. So there's
some history there.
There's a history there that makes you wonder how committed to it he is, regardless of his size. For you, Rob, is it Darnell Wright? Is it Henry T?
For me, it's Middleton, and I'm anxious to see. 6'7". I questioned that. Now I think that's pretty legit. 6'6" at least. 315 pounds. Those kind of guys don't grow on trees.
He makes Savion Williams legitimately look small.
Yeah.
And Savion Williams is not a small human being.
Well, I mean, Darrell's always been 6'6", 6'7". It's just putting on the weight because he wanted to play receiver.
Right.
And now to see him and he's put together, he's not like
it's good
sloppy.
weight.
Yeah, it's not sloppy. He does look the part, And again, nobody wants the kid to succeed more than me because I've known him since he was 14. But because I've known him since he was 14, I've almost, to borrow your phrase, I've got to see it to believe it, because he does show flashes. But I've always kind of wondered, is the commitment level there, or is he just like being a football player? I mean, if the commitment level's there, then Darrell can be a really good player.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Like you said, Rob, they don't grow them at that size. I mean, you talk about size. The other one that jumps out to me is what Trayvon Flowers looks like.
Yeah, and he's in that group with Kinks and Harris. These guys that have been in the program now for a year.
Right. But clearly he's a guy that when you look at him, it's not just because Fitz has done a great job with him, or a really good job with him. But to me, it's because he trained in the off season for the first time, because he wasn't playing baseball, and it wasn't, he wasn't in weekend baseball games and not in the weight room. I mean, it was all about football.
It became the business that they talk about.
Right, it became the business. And, I mean, he's as good a looking defensive back as they've got back there in terms of how well he's put together. They need him to be that safety opposite Nigel Warrior. If Warrior plays safety, I mean, Warrior may have to play the star position or something. But to me, he's key for what Tennessee is going to do in the secondary. Am I overstating that, or is?
No, I
mean, I think he's absolutely key. But just because they don't have a whole lot of, they just don't have an answer at the safety spot opposite Nigel, and he's the best looking.
They got a lot of
back there.
The thing, they have a lot of options. I just think he presents the highest upside.
Yeah.
You kind of know what you're going to get out of Theo Jackson. You kind of know what you're going to get out of Schamberger.
The one play that got nullified at Georgia last year, was he out of bounds or whatever it was?
Yeah.
That's a play that I'm not seeing the safety make that around here in a long time.
Well, you almost said Nigel. Nigel's only has one interception in his career. So.
Not Nigel, Trayvon.
No, I'm saying like Nigel probably wouldn't make that play.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
that's what
I mean,
I'm not seeing anybody around here in a
made
while.
That play since Deion Grant was floating around.
Or Eric Berry. Eric Berry.
But they played Eric different, when they played him down in the box.
They did his last year.
You're right. I mean, that's an athletic type play that we've not seen
at football instinctive play too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which is why Pruitt recruited him.
Yep.
And why Clemson wanted him too, was that he was a kid that was kind of, they felt like he was Play-Doh and they could mold him fairly quickly because his just natural ability and instincts were so strong.
All right, so 3 days, routes versus air have been hot and cold, a lot more cold, a lot more hot. How big of a red flag you throw up 3 days into that, or you just say, you know what, don't worry about it?
You guys may disagree with me, and I know where the board stands on this. I put very little stock in it. I just think some of these guys go out here and they're just kind of, you watch them run routes, and what they run in the game versus what they're running out there in that routes on air is just two different things. So I put a little stock in it because you hope to practice the way you play, but
and you practiced all summer. Why is your timing not any better than what it is?
The camp's a grind. So part of me thinks
it's 3 days.
I understand.
I don't think it's that bad. I even put it in the notes on Sunday. I think it's 8 minutes. They could be 8 minutes later. They could be way better when it's 7-on-7. To me, it's more notable. The first 2 days, the staff didn't seem to be that perturbed. On Sunday, Chaney was pissed, and Winky was getting irritated too. And that to me is like, all right. So this was like even the coaches know this ain't good.
Right. That that your timing's off.
Right.
And that you're not there. But you're right. It's like on Saturday, to go back to your point about don't put a whole lot of stock in it. I'm with you in some regards. I mean, Juwan Jennings, quote, got his hands on 2 balls but didn't haul them in.
And dropped another one on Sunday.
Okay, so you say on Saturday Juwan had a bad day? Well, I don't know. I mean,
he had a bad period.
I watched him run 3
minutes.
routes. He caught one and didn't catch 2 of them. I mean, I think as media people we have to be careful not to let 8 minutes turn into, oh my God, this is a huge problem.
Oh, I totally
Which
agree.
is why I asked that question. How big of a deal is it?
I totally agree. I think that a lot of it's overblown. When I'm around town and somebody sees me out in public, or a friend of mine calls me and asks me how the balls are looking, I'm always like, you don't see enough to really know. You can kind of get a vibe. You can talk to coaches and get a feel for what they think, but basing everything off of 8 minutes, the biggest thing is, like, to me, is the takeaway of like who's running first in reps. who's getting praise, who is quick to adjust, as Jesse's pointed out and multiple times in his notes about either be Warren Burrell or Henry, guys that made a mistake and they quickly learned and boom, they got a lot of praise from the coaches. To me, that's a lot more noticeable than.
Or a guy like, we don't need to pile on him, but a guy like Peterson who is clearly struggling with conditioning. I mean, that we can glean that from being out.
And
there
he looks a lot better than he did a year ago. Now, granted, I understand he came in, having
but I mean, like that is
nothing.
something I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with you that I think people live and die by the observations way too much because we get 15 minutes, and so it is such a snapshot. We can see, I think, some of the conditioning stuff. We can see that, like, hey, Kayvon Bennett looks like he's going to seriously compete for that outside linebacker spot opposite of DeAndre Johnson. Will he? We'll find out. We won't really know that until Georgia State, but that's something that, with the way the reps are going and how Rump's talking to him, early indications are that's him versus DJ.
Yeah, because perfect example. We get to post a little over 3 minutes, 20 seconds, whatever, of practice footage a day. I can manipulate the video to make it look like they're all Americans or they look like they're terrible, depending on whatever I want to do. And normally I don't like to make a kid look bad, so I just post. I cut out the drops. Like today, yesterday I cut out the Jawan Jennings drop stuff, just because I'm like, there's no point to show that. I've only got 3 minutes. Let's show, Josh Palmer catching one. So I mean, like, you're right. I mean, it's such a small snapshot.
But on the flip side of that, if coaches are bothered by it, which, like you said, first couple of days they didn't seem to be. Sunday they seemed to be more bothered by it. Then.
You take notice.
You take notice of that.
I would read a lot more into that. Like you said, I mean, because you get the impression that it's been something that, that there's been a teaching moment about, some conversations about, and they're seeing something they had talked about, needing to correct, and it's not been getting done.
I'm glad you brought up Kayvon Bennett. Back to him for just a second, Jesse. I mean, because we talk about who's gotten bigger. That guy's like lost a person. I mean, he's gotten on purpose, dropped weight, and put himself in a position. Now, is he good? Is he going to be good enough to play out there? I don't know. But at the size he was at in the spring, he wasn't going to be a factor. But where he's at right now physically, he's at least going to put himself into that conversation and give himself an opportunity, which is interesting because there's been so much talk about everybody getting bigger. He's the one guy on the team that you look at, and he's intentionally gotten smaller to give himself a better opportunity to play. And in some ways, he looks more comfortable out there right now. I'm not saying better. They've not been in pads. They haven't scrimmaged. Haven't anybody. Almost looks a little more comfortable out there than Crouch. To me, right now, Crouch is. I don't want to say struggling. That's not right. I don't want to say he's drowning. He's clearly in a new spot, playing on the outside, and it's clearly a pretty steep learning curve for him right now.
And that's how it was at the beginning when he was at inside linebacker in the spring. So, not a surprise. I will say on Bennett, the 1-2 punch of. We've heard him being praised out at practice by Chris Rumpf, and then when we met with the media before fall camp, Rumpf mentioned his name specifically as a guy of one of the two candidates in the early parts of camp he expected to push for that outside linebacker spot opposite of Darrell Taylor. Because Rumpf even made the joke, I'd be loving to be in Kayvon Bennett and DeAndre Johnson's shoes, getting to basically face one-on-ones because most teams are going to shift their protections towards DT.
Yeah, and will be interesting to see kind of what his name surfaces about. Are you surprised that Crouch is outside? You think that's just a numbers thing? Are you surprised that they've moved him out there? Because from a height standpoint, he's not necessarily prototypical. You put him next to Darrell Taylor, he's significantly shorter than Darrell Taylor. Are you surprised that they've moved him out there and left him out there to this point?
What do you think, Rob?
I was surprised just by what you mentioned about the length. I mean, I thought he just physically looked more like an inside linebacker.
I honestly, and I don't know this to be the case, but I think one could, say that this perhaps is a vote of confidence for a guy like Shannon Reed and Will Ignott, that Tennessee feels like they have a little bit better depth inside there, especially because the staff is confident that, or at least really strongly believes in the upside of a guy like Henry T. That maybe, again, that spot outside of DT or opposite of DT is wide open, and I
wonder if that spot you can play a little more sick'em, go chase the football at the outside spot as opposed to some of the adjustment stuff you've got to do at the inside.
Yeah, because
spot.
it's not, because Tennessee rarely plays like a true Sam. I mean, they're really playing two jacks to get, just on each side. So I would agree with that, and that's why I think you could honestly see maybe DeAndre or Bennett, whoever wins that job, being kind of like the traditional guy opposite, but then whether it's Harrison, Crouch, whoever is kind of that designated pass rusher that Pruitt, was pining for when we were at SEC Media Days, trying to get more outside linebackers in the 2020 class. They kind of fill that role situationally.
Let's go back to the secondary right quick. Corner, not opposite, but look, Alante Taylor and Bryce Thompson are going to be your corners unless they have to slide somebody into play at the star position. Who do you like? You like Warren Burrell's their third?
Yeah.
He's running third. That's
right.
Right now.
I mean, I think a guy like Balin Buchanan would fit into that role if he was healthy, but he's not.
It's interesting about Burrell because there were some people who felt like when he came out of high school that he wasn't maybe as fast as you needed him to be or as quick as you needed him to be, and
Or wasn't big enough.
Yeah, that's why some people were a little bit hesitant on him. But it looks like he's adapted quickly. I mean, and has jumped in. And done.
I think being here
I don't
spring
think
helps
he's third
big.
just because of
He looks
lack
polished.
of numbers. Yeah, that's
I mean,
the
for a
word.
freshman, he looks polished.
Go ahead. I mean,
I think being here in the spring is huge, especially for a guy like him. You get that extra amount of time in the weight room with Fitz. You get to go through spring practice and kind of just learn how to practice. I mean, I think that goes a long way. A guy like Darnell, do you think he's trying to figure out how to practice? I mean,
That's a good point.
And Billy Seals is my guy up there in West Virginia. But I mean, the practice he runs and the practice that they run up here are two different things.
Yeah.
And how you compete and the guys you're going against on a rep by rep basis. So I mean, I think for Warren being able to go in spring and go against certain guys and kind of make your mistakes then when not a lot of people are watching, helps you now as you enter fall camp.
I think you can see that with Wanye too. And just comparing the way him and Darnell, go about practice. I mean, I'm not, I would imagine Darnell will adjust quickly, but right now you can tell just things are easier for Wanye.
And my lasting comment about that is that, and Tennessee needs all three of those guys because of their particular positions, whether they start or are in the rotation. All three of the guys we just named, I think Burrell is included in that list, need to be ready in week one. Because part of the reason I think Burrell has absolutely capitalized on his opportunities being here in the spring, those 15 practices, the 3 practices thus far. But Tennessee just doesn't have a lot of options as true cornerbacks. They just don't. I mean,
Right.
that's why they moved Gerard Means over there. That's why he switched positions. I mean, Terrell Bailey, I don't think you're going to get much out of that. Solomon is a guy that only weighs 170 pounds. The staff loves his physical upside, but I think he's at least a year away. Kenneth George, where does he fit in the mix? So part of it is just it's opportunity. Tennessee, as good as Alante and Bryce Thompson are, Tennessee cannot survive this season with them playing every snap out wide.
Think Means can help him over that side? You think he's
I think
he's
you'll get a crash course.
I mean,
why not? I mean, like as Jesse said, I mean, just from an athletic standpoint, and that's what Jeremy was talking about when he met with the media a few days ago, was just, we have an older group at receiver. I mean, how many? You keep him a receiver, and what is he going to play? How many snaps does he realistically play? He can play special teams for you, but as far as on one side of the ball, the other, he's got a much better shot of 2 or 3 platooning at corner than being the 7th or 8th guy at receiver.
And I'll say this at receiver, for
even if T wants to play a big mark.
Right. Everybody talks about Callaway, and I think Callaway's looked fine, and Jennings has done more than you thought. I think Brandon Johnson right now is a guy that's got a little bit of a second lease on things. For a guy who had a hard time getting in the rotation last year. I mean, he had a hard time being a factor. I think for 3 days he's looked good.
He's been as sure-handed as any of the receivers on the roster doing routes on air. And then when you translate that to the press release drills, he's won far more of his battles than several other guys in that unit.
We'll see.
Not speaking of the press release, I thought Burrell really showed up in that today. I mean,
oh yeah, man.
Punched Jawan in the chest.
He went. He either won all 3 of his reps, or he won 2, drew 1, and that was against Jawan Jennings, Josh Palmer, and Marquez Callaway, Tennessee's 3 starting wide receivers.
And he wants to the head of the line. He's hunting the best competition to go against. You got to his kind of mentality, or at least that's what it appears in watching the limited time that we get to watch out there. Of course, this was supposed to be the open practice on Sunday that we could watch all of that, but weather forced that and changed all those types of things, and so that didn't happen. So we will not get an open practice, but we will get back to the practice field. Tennessee's off today. We'll see what Tennessee looks like on Tuesday, Wednesday as they go into full pads and start to get some reviews really on the line of scrimmage when they get into full pads.
Yeah.
We'll start to get a better idea of kind of how things are looking there. Quickly on the football recruiting front, it's quiet right now. Not
Totally
a whole lot
quiet.
going on. Everybody's in their high school deal. It's supposed to be quiet right now, right?
It is. I mean, there'll be somebody, there'll be inevitably a few kids in general, not just Tennessee guys that are looking at Tennessee, but pop in the month of August. But, right now, especially early August, it is really, really quiet, and rightfully so, as, high schools get cranked up. A lot of those high school coaches either wanted you in the boat somewhere before we start or wait a while.
Or
Do not do it right now.
off. Yeah. Yeah, they certainly want that. We'll keep up to date on anything going on there, but as expected, it is quiet right now on the football recruiting front. But, Rob, on the basketball recruiting front, Rick Barnes and his staff certainly hoping for some good news.
Yeah, Tuesday, we'll know in a little more than 24 hours. Keon Johnson going to announce at 6 o'clock Central Time, and, I've been writing it.
That dreaded Central Time just gets you every
I
time.
know. Writing it and responded to questions for weeks now. I might end up looking foolish Tuesday night, but I'll be really surprised if it's not Tennessee. As somebody around the program told me not long ago, he's been to Ohio State once on an official visit last month, and just his only tie there is a former Vanderbilt assistant is up there. Somebody around the program had counted it up, and since Keon was a freshman, came up here for elite camp. He's been on Tennessee's campus 13 times. So that's
Follow the visits.
You can't do much more than that if you're Tennessee
No.
in terms of recruiting a guy. To get him on your campus 13 times.
over the course of his high school career. Now that's over 4 years.
Still,
So,
that's
Follow the visits unless you're the who's the wide receiver from Vegas who signed here and never been to campus.
Cedric Tillman.
Cedric Tillman.
I don't think you've been to any campus.
So
man.
Keon's not. He's not giving anything away.
Sure.
I don't think he's told Tennessee for sure that he's coming. But
I talked to him.
I just story written.
No, it's not.
Video shot.
But it does feel. He's wanting his moment, rightfully so. Going to have his moment. But Tennessee's been there every step of the way. He's been a priority for Tennessee. Had the assistant coach stayed at Vanderbilt, and the Vanderbilt staff stayed at Vanderbilt,
Might have been tricky.
this one would have been different.
Different. Academics are a big deal with this family, and I think distance from home is what I think is hugely in Tennessee's favor, and that would have been a tough one.
Right, because he's in the battle. What kind of if he jumps in the boat, what's Tennessee getting?
For one thing, he's getting ready to be a 5-star. I think after Eric Bossy had another look at him last week at the USA National Basketball Facility in Colorado Springs. One thing he'll be right off the bat is an elite perimeter defender. He's 6'5", 6'6", long arms, an upper echelon athlete that is not just a good athlete. He's gonna be one of the best athletes in the SEC. Jump shot is coming together. He is he's a greyhound.
So he'll be the Ron Harper of this team.
Before knee injuries. Yeah. He's a really good player and has all the tools to be an NBA shooting guard.
Yeah, and this is what Tennessee's been building for. You've talked about it for years. This is the Waters, moving into these type of athletes. This is what they've worked for the last 3 years. Obviously, success on the court's been important with that. Player development's been a huge part of that, and relationship building is the third part of that. So we'll see. That's to come down Tuesday night, and we'll have full coverage of that and full coverage of Tennessee football as well. That's going to do it for this Monday edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Rob Lewis, Jesse Simonton, and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody.